I now like to talk about some of the strategies involving imaging and provisioning in the Microsoft environment. Now, it's important to have a good visualization of how all this works, and this drawing is going to hopefully help you with grasping those concepts. So to start with, let's talk about traditional imaging concepts first, and then we'll discuss provisioning. In traditional imaging, the idea of this is generally you would kind of start out with setting up what is called an imaging server. Okay, so in the Windows world, we would basically set up a server on premise most of the time. This could be the latest version of server. It could actually go all the way back to Windows 2008, Windows Server 2008, in order to do this. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a new version, but it does need to be a version of server. And then what you do on that server is you install something called WDS. WDS is Windows Deployment Services, and I'll just kind of put that right here for you so you've got the acronym. Windows Deployment Services is one of the roles and features that you can install on your Windows servers. Okay, so we installed WDS, all right, and with WDS you get what's called PXE, PXE, which stands for Pre-Boot Execution Environment. I'll put that right here. If you're not familiar with PXE, PXE is a capability that allows a machine to essentially be booted off the network. So what's great about it is you literally could have nothing on a computer, and if there's a PXE service running on your network, this computer could boot off the network, get an IP address from like a DHCP server and all of that, and it could communicate in regards to this server. So this is what PXE is all about, pre-boot execution environment. Okay. The next thing that I would want to install on this server would be the Windows ADK, the Windows Assessment and Deployment Toolkit, which is going to give me, that's kind of a big acronym. Let's see if we can fit it all in here, but WADK, Windows Assessment and Deployment Toolkit. Again, it's just a free series of tools you can install, free series of tools you can download and install on a machine. You can actually install that on client machines as well, but in this case, we put it on a server. And it's going to give me a series of tools like DISM, Deployment Imaging Servicing Management. I'm going to have access to Windows PE, the Windows pre-installation environment. You can download and have that with it. And then also I'm going to want MDT, Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which is the graphical tool that sort of helps me oversee imaging. Now granted, you could also put that on a different computer, but most people like to put it right there on the server. Okay, so this server is going to have a lot of various tools on it that or various services and tools on it that are going to assist me with imaging, and so this would be called our imaging service. All right, or imaging server. From there, what I would do is, let's say I need to set up like 50 machines to be identical. Maybe imagine this scenario. Imagine your company's hiring a big sales force, to help market products. Maybe your company's doing really well, but they know they need more salespeople, so they hire a big sales force. So you have to set up sales machines. So the starting point for this usually is you would have a Windows machine. Okay, so you have Windows client machine, Windows client, and this would be what we call a reference machine. Okay, reference PC. So this would be a machine that has all the software on it. So you would set it up and configure it exactly the way you need it all to be set up. So I'd take a version of Windows, I would install everything on it, configure it the way I want to configure it, install the applications on it, everything like Office and all of that would be on there. And this would be my reference machine. Okay. And maybe this is going to be, you kind of have to think about, like in sales, for example, you have multiple salespeople, multiple sales sub-departments. So maybe this is for what we call inside salespeople. and we have like an outside sales. And if you know the business world, you may know there's different various subcategories of sales. Maybe this is geared towards inside salespeople. You'll see why I'm doing it this way here in just a second. Okay, so from there, now that I've got my reference computer, what I want to do is capture this as an image. So what we're going to do, we would boot this computer up to capture the image. Now, in order to do that, we need to boot it into what is called Windows PE. Windows PE. So to capture an image, we need to boot this into Windows PE. All right. So the first thing also to be aware of is that this is and I just noticed that I've typoed reference PC, so let's just fix that real quick here. All right. With Windows, one thing to be aware of is that all versions of Windows that are installed, those are sometimes referred to as online images. All right. So any Windows operating system where the operating system is installed on the computer is called an online image. Now you might say, well, what if I shut that computer off and it's off? It's still considered an online image. And I'm going to explain what an offline image is in just a second. Okay, so any version of Windows that's installed is called an online image. So what you're trying to do is capture this online image, and it'll be stored in a file which is an offline image. All right, but I'll get to that more in a minute. So to capture an image, I need to be booted into Windows PE. All right, now to do that, there's various ways you can have Windows PE. Windows PE is a lightweight version of Windows. It's not graphical, it's all command line. And you can get into Windows PE by booting off Pixie, or by a DVD with it on it, a CD, or a USB drive that's got it on it. So as you can see, there are various ways that you can have something that has Windows PE on it. Pixie's probably the easiest way to do it. You got this server that's got the Pixie service running on. As long as they're on the same network, you can tell this computer to boot off the network. It'll see Pixie. It'll download Windows PE automatically into memory as long as it's been you've set all this up on this server. Okay, so from there, once that's done, I can run dism.exe to capture the image. So dism.exe is a command line tool that's inside the Windows PE environment that's going to let me basically capture this image. All right, and then what will happen is you store that image inside of an image file. Okay, now in this case, we'll just call this image file sales.wim. Now that, what you see there, that is what we call an offline image. Okay, so when it's captured in a file, it's called an offline image. All right, now here's what's really neat about it. The image file can actually contain more than one image, and you have to name the image inside the file. So I would call this image inside sales, and it'll actually have a number associated with it called an index number. In this case, index 1. The very first image inside of an image file is called index 1. Now, you may say, okay, well, wait a minute. You said it can be, you're only storing one image. What if you wanted to store multiple? Well, check this out. Where you get into a situation like this, where we have another reference computer, but instead of this being inside sales, this reference computer is configured slightly different, and this will be called outside sales. Okay, and you're going to capture that image the same way, except this time you're going to tell it to store it in this file, but it'll be called outside sales. So as you can see, you've actually got two images stored inside the same image file. And what's really neat about that too is any files that are inside that sales.wim file that are the exact same file, they don't have to have multiple copies. So the image itself can be kind of compressed down. You may say, well, does it look at the names of the files? No, it actually doesn't look at the name. It looks at the binary of the file. The binary of the file is the same. It doesn't have to reuse the same files. All right. So what you see here, this is an example of light touch installation. All right, LTI, light touch installation. It's traditional. It's the way that we have been doing it now for years and years and years. This came out, doing imaging, of course, came out in the 1990s, but this particular method of imaging became available in the year 2008 when Windows Server 2008 became available. Okay, before 2008, they had something else called RIS, Remote Installation Services, but this is how it's been ever since Server 2008 came out. This is a traditional way of doing a light touch installation. Now, why is it a light touch installation? Because I still have to put my hands on the computer. Now, I still had to put my hands on these computers to capture the image, and then also you got to put your hands on the computer when you're deploying an image as well. So imagine a scenario where I've got, let's say that these machines right here are my target machines or destination computers. Okay, so we'll say we have 50 new computers, and these are, again, these are our destination PCs. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy the image. You're going to essentially deploy the image about the exact same way that you captured the image. Let me move these acronyms just a little bit out of the way here. All right. So you're going to use deploy image, but you're going to be using WinPE and Dizzle. So it's basically the same exact thing that you did over here, but there is instead of a capture command, you'll have a different command that'll be used for deploying this image. All right, it's called apply. Most everybody uses the word deploy, but it's actually called applying an image using Dizzle. So then you can boot these machines up, tell them to boot off Windows PE by basically triggering Pixie, which is like hit a lot of times it's like F12 as the computer's booting, but it does depend on the type of computer you're using, and it will trigger to boot off the network. Now again, all of this is a light touch installation, LTI, because you're still having to put your hands on the computer. Now there is also what we call zero touch installation. To do a zero touch installation, you have to have another special server. That special server is called Microsoft Configuration Manager. All right, MCM or Microsoft Config Manager. Oops. Let me fix that. Microsoft, and then I'll put Config Manager in there. All right, now this server has had various names over the years, and its name keeps changing. It used to be, back in the 90s, it was called an SMS server, System Management Services, and then in the 2000s it became SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager. Then in the beginning of, 2020, I believe they changed it to Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, and now they just call it Microsoft Config Manager, which of course is still doing endpoint management, which is endpoints being your clients and all that. The great thing about Config Manager is it has these task sequences that are used for automation. So you can automate things. Now, granted, the MDT, the Microsoft Deployment tool, which is the workbench, has some task sequences as well, but it doesn't have all the task sequences needed for doing full automation. So the thing about Config Manager is it can communicate with your various devices, and it can tell your various devices what to do. It can tell devices to get captured, and it can tell devices to get deployed, and it can tell devices, it can tell the server information that needs to happen as well. This is what makes Config Manager special, is the fact that it can do that it can perform a zero-touch installation and all that. So it can do all this automation. That's what makes this so powerful. That's what makes this so good. And that is what's going to give you a zero-touch deployment. So with this, with Config Manager, you get the ability to support ZTI. Now, I'll also tell you that Config Manager is not free. It's a licensed product. So you do have to have a licensed version. You have to have a licensed Config Manager. Whereas everything else you saw before I put this Config Manager on the screen is free. You have to have licensed Windows, obviously, and licensed server. But as far as all the tools go, it's all free. Okay. Now, everything you just saw there is the way we have done things now since the year 2008. Okay, there's not really anything that has changed since the year 2008 that you just saw on the screen. And I'll be honest with you, this is now, you might be just learning this for the first time and might be thinking, oh, this is a great solution for our company and all that. But let me be honest, this is not the direction Microsoft wants to go anymore. And the days are numbered. There'll be a day, it could be 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I don't know when it'll be, where they're going to probably stop supporting the older imaging solution. What Microsoft is wanting to do now is called provisioning. So this is imaging, what you just saw. This helps you visualize it. And yes, you do need to understand just the concepts here. But just know this is the old way to do it, believe it or not. And you might still be doing it in your company, and there's nothing wrong with that because it still has its place in the world. But I can tell you that Microsoft is really trying to push everybody into the newer solutions. What are the newer solutions? The newer solutions is provisioning. All right, now let's go down to this other little drawing, and this is my little domain cloud drawing. And the idea here is, let's say we have a domain. We have this Microsoft domain here. In my case, it's examlabpractice.com, and you have Azure, right? Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365 services, and all that running out in the cloud. Now, there's two ways of doing provisioning. The first way I'll show you is the way they really want you to do it, which is to use Intune. Intune has a feature called Autopilot. All right, and I'm not getting into all the details here. This is giving you this is the planning phase. This is visualizing and understanding. But Autopilot is a provisioning solution. With Autopilot, what I can basically do is I can buy new computers. Let's take, let me just get rid of this for just a second. All right, so I can buy new computers, and let's say that this little box, these little boxes right here, this is going to represent new computers, new PCs, okay? And I can register this, I can learn what these machines' device IDs are, okay? A device ID is a unique identifier. It's based on the motherboard serial number and all that on these machines, but I'm not going to get into too many details on that. But I can discover this thing called the device ID, and I can register the device IDs of these new machines. You could learn this from your provider if you're buying this from Dell or HP or whoever. And what's neat about it, you can register the device IDs into what's called Intune here, Microsoft Intune in the cloud. All right, and you can create these things called configuration profiles. Now what happens is you buy these new computers, you plug them in as long as they have an internet connection and they've already got a copy of Windows. You know, usually when you buy a computer from Dell or HP or whoever, it's already got Windows installed on it, right? So basically you plug it in, it's got Windows on. As long as there's an internet connection, it'll boot up across the internet automatically and communicate with Intune, the Intune service on the internet. And because you've registered the device IDs of these machines with your Intune service, it knows that these devices belong to you. And if you configure this thing called a device configuration profile, all right, it'll configure the out-of-box experience and all that, and Intune can deploy software down to these devices as well as reconfigure, or what they like to say, not reconfigure, they like to say reprovision these machines. Okay, that means that if there's any software on these machines you don't like, Intune Autopilot can have that stripped off. And then any software that needs to be installed on there, it can all be deployed. It can deploy policies, all of that down to these new machines. You can even do that without even having a Microsoft domain. In my drawing, I've got a domain here, but I literally could have no domain and I could do all of this. And it doesn't involve you having to blow away the hard drive and redo what's on there, okay? That's the idea. Whereas if you get into imaging, you are, essentially blowing away hard drives and redoing things. So this is the newer solution. Now, another way of doing provisioning is not involving the cloud at all, okay? You can actually install the Windows ADK, this little thing right here, can be installed on a computer in my domain, and I can do what's called provisioning packages. I can set up a server with, let me just get rid of this for right now. I could set up a server. Technically, it doesn't even have to be a server, to be honest with you. It could be a client operating system that you set this up on. But I can set up a server with what are called provisioning packages. All right, and that's these little files, these little files. Okay, that, let's put little writing so it looks like little files here. These little files that can tell a computer to remove software that they don't need, and that can be and also you can tell a machine to get its software reconfigured. So essentially it can do the same thing as Intune, but it's an on-premise solution. All right, so from there I could get these new machines and I could use provisioning packages to tell these machines to all get reconfigured without having to use Intune. Now there's a catch to all this. One of the beautiful things about Intune is that machines can travel. They could be anywhere in the world and Intune can manage them. With the provisioning package solution, the machines basically generally have to be on premise. They've got to have connectivity with this server somehow. Technically it could be done over a VPN or something like that, but it's a lot harder to manage machines with provisioning packages this way than it would be to use Intune. Intune is Microsoft's main solution now for dealing with MDM MAM. So if you really want to know the direction Microsoft really wants everybody to go, it's going to be the Intune route. But the provisioning package route is another solution that doesn't really cost anything. Okay, it's free. You download Windows ADK, you're going to get the software needed to set up provisioning packages. So again, what's the major difference from imaging versus provisioning? Imaging involves the traditional way of capturing an image, blowing away the hard drive of a computer, and then deploying that image down, whereas provisioning doesn't involve you having to blow anything away. You're just taking what's already there, whatever Windows copy that's there, and you're redoing it the way you want it to be done. Okay? All right, so hopefully now you have a grasp on visualizing the differences between imaging and provisioning. Hey, this is John Christopher. I hope you enjoyed getting to experience a little bit of this course, and I hope you'll join me on the full adventure. If you'll check the description of this video, you'll see a link that'll show you how you can get access to the full course. Now, in the full course, you're going to learn how to set up a practice environment where you can practice hands-on, and I'm going to provide you with lots of virtual simulations that you can do 24/7. All you need is a web browser. So I hope you'll join me, and I hope you'll also give me a like and subscribe. I'm trying very, very hard to get this channel to build and grow, and so I hope you'll take the time to do that.